All right, joining me now is Jacob Miguel, who produced, directed all the things for Punk Rock Lottery documentary. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about this, and then I want to go back a little bit in time for you. But the concept when you first reached out, you're like punk rock lottery, and I'm like, what is a punk rock lottery? And I guess why wouldn't there be a documentary on something that's a punk rock lottery? And I had no idea. There's actually another podcast out there called like Punk Lotto Pod, and when
Yeah,
I
I
first
saw that. Yeah.
yeah. When I first saw that from you, I thought, oh, is it a documentary about that podcast? You're like, all right, I don't know. Let's look into this more. And lo and behold, it has nothing to do with anything in that nature.
Yeah.
The actual punk rock lottery, which is what your documentary is about, why don't you give a little concept as to what it is?
Sure. So Punk Rock Lottery is an event that's been happening in Austin, Texas for it just had its 11th year. It's changed along the way. But it is essentially about 30 to 40 musicians, a lot of them punks, but sometimes you've got like metalheads, like country music people. Like, one year we had like a guy who played like acoustic guitar, like John Mayer style, and he like showed up and was like, I want to play punk bass. I want to figure it out. So you get about like 30 to 40 random musicians who all are willing to dedicate 30 days of their life to working with strangers to write 5 songs and then compete against each other. So everybody throws their name in a hat. We have a big event where the names are drawn. We form the bands. Everybody gets to meet who they're going to play with. And then we say, good luck. We'll see you in 30 days. And I had heard about it the 6th year it happened, but I wasn't able to go. And then the 7th year it happened, I ended up befriending uh, the guy who essentially started it. And he told me, he's like, man, I'm turning 40. I got about to have a kid. Like, I don't know how much longer this is going to happen. I really want it to be documented. Will you come and shoot the show? And I was like, absolutely, no problem. Um, but once he like really described like what went down, like with all the different rehearsals and stuff and some of the drama that had happened in the past, I was like, I just have to fucking film all these rehearsals. Like, there's just no way to not do it, like, because that's the fun. Like, anybody can go see a concert of some guys who like may or may not know how to play their instruments, but like, you know, watching them like go through the whole starting a band and uh, everything that comes along with that, is what I thought was going to be more fun, and I think it was. So yeah.
Absolutely, it was. I love the documentary. So first off, I like documentaries in general, but love punk documentaries. Love to learn things. Love to learn things about people I already knew, but obviously I didn't know anything about. I knew a couple of the guys that were in the documentary. Very few of the participants in the contest, but I knew a few people in there. But I loved to watch. And by the way, you did a really great job. Like the composition, it had a very punk aesthetic to it, but it was put together in an interesting way. And a quick side note, like I recently watched a documentary that came out on Amazon Prime. It was about John Candy, right? And big fan of John Candy. And I watched it and I loved it because John Candy, probably one of my favorite actors ever. He's a super funny dude. Sad that unfortunately he died and all that. But what I'm getting at is the way they put it together, there was just so much that was detracting for me. Like I'm evaluating it from a creator's standpoint too. Like, oh, why'd you do that? Why are you doing it this way? And it was just too much. I felt pulling away, and then I'd be into what they're talking about and some interviews and then the way they put it together. And long story short, I mean, this is a thing by John Candy put together by Tom Hanks's son, who's an actor and all that, right? So they had all of this capability, and I just left thinking, all right, I'm glad I watched it, but man, they could have done a lot better job putting that together. For me personally, I mean, that's just me, eye of the beholder. But watching yours, I never felt that. I felt it was just a great, interesting way. The only thing it made me think is this is something you could totally do as like a game show, like a contestant. Like these could be 20, 30-minute episodes, and each episode is like following one specific band during their 30 days, right? And then it kind of culminates into the contest at the end. That's the only thing that I thought the whole time, not that, oh God, it's why are they doing it this way? Why is he doing it that way? And those kind of things. I thought it was a great job that you did putting it together.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and there were people in the beginning of this thing that were like, you should make it a series, like this could be multiple episodes, like exactly like what you're saying. And I was like, like I'm a filmmaker. I want to just make a movie. If it becomes something bigger after that, bring in the bigger cameras, bring in the money, like, do it all crazy, go ahead. Like I don't own any piece of the idea of Punk Rock Lottery. Neither does the people who started it, really. It's just an idea, and it's something that nobody wants to like claim ownership of. So the only thing that would like ruin it is if some major uh television network decided like, oh, we're gonna do it and we're gonna push all these people out and we're gonna make lots of money on it. It's like that would suck. And I think there's enough like trademark between enough like punks around Austin that like there could be a good fight against them to be like, no, you can't do that without us or whatever. But I don't know. We'll see what happens in the future. Really, for me, I wanted to make a documentary. I wanted to make a feature film, something that could be sent to festivals, something that could be, watched, digested, let people talk about it, and not, stretch everything out. Um, I feel like when a lot of these documentary type series are going on, they just kind of drag on. There's like a whole bunch of extra stuff that you just don't need to know, and it gets kind of boring, or they're like really forcing the story one way or another, and it becomes way more subjective than objective, and it's like that's not what I came to watch a documentary, or a docu-series for. So, um, yeah, and I went to college, not for filmmaking, but it was more of like it was called new media, so we were using video and a lot of like art installation type stuff like that. And I kind of just fell in love with the video part of it. And there was a guy who was doing like 4 semesters of documentary history and theory that you could just kind of take on the side. And I took that, and it was like documentary as an art form is it's not just storytelling, of like this happened. It's like it came from such a avant-garde background, like some of the first documentaries are just fucking trains, going by. Like the Ziga Vertov, like it's his, first film was just a bunch of trains, like, and it was cool. It was awesome. It was avant-garde. And some of the other earlier ones, the liberties they took with storytelling, um, the poetic license. I feel like that has been like pushed aside by the major streamers. The major streamers are saying, we want a documentary or we want a docu-series, and this is how you do it. You put your character here, you make the background blurry, they tell you the story, then you go get all the pictures, and it's all just kind of, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, a lot of them are really great stories, things that people want to hear, people want to talk about, um, people want to learn more. And yeah, so like there's the history side of documentary, and then there's the art side of documentary. And I kind of wanted to like reel it back in and be like, this is a like experimental art form, guys, and we don't have to do it this way. So like, let's see what I can do.
That's perfect. And, maybe that's what there needs to be. There's all sorts of, you know, recreate what we think about things. And, news media is a great example. Any mainstream news media, all of them are awful, terrible. They stick to the same type of formulas. You hear well, any who wants to be a guest on one of those news type shows? Because even late night talk show for that matter, same type of format, right? You get your 3 to 5 minutes. We're going to do commercial breaks. We're going to cut. You get a couple minutes. We're going to slide you along, and that's it. As opposed to kind of what we're doing here, where you get to have more of that long form. Hey, let's actually learn something about what you're doing and your concept instead of come up with like the three best highlights. We'll quickly touch on them and then we're going to move on.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants that. And the same thing can go with there's the mainstream streamers, as it were, and there can be the drawback is money. It always comes to money, and with money becomes interest, right? And the good and the bad. The good about what you're doing is it's awesome, and anybody that's into it really likes it. The bad, well, unfortunately, our audience in punk is such a small minority. There's not a lot of capital to generate from that to therefore try to recreate something and do you're something that's comparable in what appears to be quality that you would get on those other streamers, kind of as you're describing. So you kind of have to start and make things interesting as you did, and then it's just one of those things that hopefully catches fire and gets interest from people outside of the punk community, because unfortunately we're such a small minority. It is really hard to do something that can really transfer out into the punk community and make it so you can kind of redo, like you could totally go to some other city now, or even go back. Shoot, a quick point out, you filmed that documentary covers the seventh annual punk rock lottery. And as you just pointed out, 11. So that was a few years ago. You could be going back each year, filming this as a series, but redefine how it's done. It doesn't have to be done in that format. Maybe it's each episode is 5 minutes to 30 minutes or whatever, just however interesting the concept is. You tell the story, boom, and you do the thing and you release it in whatever way. But then the drawback still is all right, how do you get it out to enough people that it's interesting? Therefore, as you pointed out early on, getting the right equipment, right cameras, have a few other people involved. Because when you have to do the majority of the filming, editing, everything on your own, interviewing, setting up all the things, coordinating, and it's such a small team, it's very difficult to then cover and probably thoroughly do. Because just for example, here, all those bands probably had 8 different bands in the documentary. Well, some of them were probably doing stuff at the same time. So to actually really cover all of those bands, you need more people, more cameras, so you can be in multiple places at the same time.
Yeah, that was really hard, and the whole thing was it was all volunteers at first. I mean, the whole movie was shot for like $700, you know, like most was just, like people willing to like show up and help. All the like money I had to spend came into the post part of it, but really it was like, I just got a huge database of people who were like, yeah, I'll hold the camera. Like this guy's girlfriend and this dude who, was going to be in a band but didn't have the time, but he still wanted to show up. And, I had like, I think probably 13 different people that held the camera at one point or another. And, and then I told everybody, I was like, yo, if there's nobody in your room with a camera, you didn't pick one up from me and take it into the room, like, just turn your cell phone on. But like, once I started realizing, like, hey, we're going to have so many different media formats, I was like, and when you shoot with your cell phone, fuck it, shoot it vertical, so we can get even more aesthetic out of it. But that was, I knew that it was going to be low budget just from the very beginning. I didn't have any money. I was broke, and like everybody who was throwing the event was like, yeah, I mean, we want you to do it, but like, I don't know, here's a few $100. Like they weren't, thinking big documentary. They just wanted like something for YouTube to, remember it. Like, here's the concert. So when I decided like I want to get into the rooms with all these people, it's going to be low budget, it's punk rock, like why not make it aesthetically look old? Use the like out of date media formats. So I bought VHS cameras, high tape cameras, DV cameras, all of them on eBay for like $30 a piece, and it's like, it's broken, it's just for parts. And so I'd buy like 3 of them and be like, I bet you one of them works if I can find a battery to put in it. And lo and behold, yeah, 2 of them are broken, one of them works, great. Uh, And so yeah, like a lot of the aesthetic, it was like it was a double choice. It was like I had to do it for the, because I didn't have any money, but also it ended up being like, yeah, I think that's the way it should be anyway. So
True. And it
yeah.
turned out great. And again, going back, you made it interesting. Yeah, because of the choices that you made with the type of camera. And uh, I think that a lot of great stuff could be made to go back to that point. If we go out and start a punk network and then hopefully get punks from around the world. And then you can get other punks like yourself to create interesting content and create our own type of streaming thing, right? That would be awesome. The drawback to doing on a lower budget, the biggest, and because you came up with great ways. I mean, $700, come on, that's amazing for what you put out, right? That's fantastic and so interesting. And I think the drawback is now you got to figure out how to justify people taking the amount of time. Like, how many hours would you estimate you put into the project for everything, for filming, the time you spent, the editing, the everything you've done? How many hours do you think you put into that?
Uh, well, it's been 7 years, I think. Because there was actually during COVID a couple of years where they didn't do the event. So even though it's the 11th, it was just the 11th event. There had been another couple years in the middle there. Um,
Gotcha.
so I'd say, putting in like 6 to 8 hours a day. Like I'm just trying to do math in my head. Thousands and thousands of hours between me and two other editors um, over a very long period of time. Then during COVID, we were still kind of struggling. Like, what is the structure? How are we going to play this out? And that's when one of the editors, Michael Green, came up with the idea of like, let's do chapters like a zine. And I was like, that sounds fun. Um, and then we were like, well, we have all this extra time on our hands. Let's do the stop motion. And so that alone, it was four of us got together once a week for 12 hours uh, for a year and a half to make all those stop motion things. So my living room just had this huge fucking double poster board thing in the middle of it made out of concrete that just stayed there for a year and a half.
It's crazy. And so it goes back to a labor of love, but unfortunately, a labor of love can only take you so far. Like, if you make this project, I can't come to you and say, all right, same thing. And in 7 years, I'll see you and we'll throw your hour and a half on.
Yeah,
You can't do that. You need a lot of people and a lots of labors of love, or you got to have something that can kind of justify the amount of time. Therefore, you can go out and create another thing, and we can go enjoy the next thing because you did such a great job on this one. It's like, all right, cool. What's he going to do next now?
yeah,
I've seen this. That was awesome. Are you going to go to another city? Are you going to film another punk rock lottery? Is there something else? Maybe this is spawning off, or maybe it has already, and there's punk rock lottery or an equivalent in other cities, and maybe go see what theirs is like. It could be so many things, but then again, for one to do 7 years, I mean, that's obviously how many are you going to get done? In the next 20 years, you're only going to do three,
yeah.
right? And so you have to have those things that can justify the amount of time that it takes to then be able to do, instead of well, I'm going to go do it and then eventually I'll get it done.
Yeah. No, I think
Yeah.
for me, this one was, it was the first full feature I was going to direct. Um, and it was the first documentary I was going to work on. So I've been like part of producing teams that have done other feature films, but they had a script. So the editing process was like pretty easy. We know like who says what, and like you only have so many camera angles. So, the like the documentary editing process when you go into something with no idea what you're getting into is pretty fucking hard. Like there was no structure whatsoever. So I think that took a lot of time. I don't think that I'm necessarily interested in doing another documentary just like this. I think this was kind of, for me, it was because it's the first one, because it's so open ended, because there are other people who are willing to work with me, like, let's just put the time in, make it what it has to be, and then hopefully, yeah, like whatever I do next, like there will be some money, and there will be some help from people who are getting paid, and so they work faster and they don't have to, half of the reason it took so long is because, you know, we were editing, and then one of the editors was like, shit, I got to be on a movie. So 30 days later, they come back, they're gone. And then, I've got to go work in a bar 4 nights a week, just to pay my rent while I'm working on the thing. And so like we were so spread thin that it was always a second thought, it was a second
Right.
priority to like just trying to live. So I wanted to make this one good enough that, you know, if I ask for money next time, there's going to be some, you know, um, and and I have a much better understanding of how a lot of stuff works now too. Um, like the process of like fixing all the audio and stuff. Like the movie was finished editing like 3 years ago, but then we had to go through all the audio, we had to go through the color, we had to go through all the legal stuff, like just getting the rights to everything and changing songs that we couldn't get rights to, and before you knew it, it was like 2 more years had gone by just figuring out the annoying stuff, and then we were like, okay, now how do we show it to people? And I had to spend a year figuring out how to distribute it. Like, so I know how to do all that stuff now. So instead of figuring it out as I go, it's just kind of like, yeah, we just got to do that. We got to do that. We got to do that. And if I can pay people to do it, it could be done in like 5 months maximum.
Sure. Right.
Um,
What's so spawning that, I guess it's probably a relief having it done, right? And so you have it out, people are actually watching it. When did it officially come out? Like how long has it been available for people to consume?
it came out on September 16th. So not
September
very.
16th. And why don't you tell us where's the best places to see it?
So right now it is on Tubi. That is the place that we're really pushing people to watch it currently. The distribution company that we work with, they're pretty smart. They've done a bunch of other movies before, and so they were like, it's weird, but out of all these streamers that we can ask to put it out here, put it out there, whatever, Tubi pays the best. They actually pay their artists, and so that's why we really are trying to champion on that until it comes out on some of these more like niche, kind of cult different ones. Like we're going to be on Night Flight in a little bit, and I'm not sure if you're kind of familiar with that, but like all of their movies are
No.
like old cult, like punk rock movies or horror movies. It's like or horror movies about punk rock. It's really cool.
That's
I
awesome.
hadn't heard of it before, but then when the distribution company was like, "You guys are going to be so happy," like they said yes, and I went and looked at it. I was like, "Holy shit! Like this company's awesome." So um, yeah, right now Tubi. If you don't have access to Tubi or you want to watch it on something else, there's another one that's called Fossum or Fabesum. You know what I'm talking about? It has like,
I don't. Was that the other one that was on your website? Because there was two options and
yeah,
I clicked on the
yeah.
Tubi one.
I don't know how to pronounce it. I think yeah, it looks like Favesome, but it has like an extra V to make it almost a W. I don't know. But it's another one of those, it's the same idea where, it's free to watch. You just got to watch some commercials, and, you know, please do, because every time the commercial plays, we get paid. So,
Sweet.
um,
Well, I watched it on Tubi, and so I'm glad. And I like to have Tubi because you never know what you're going to get. They even have, quick side note, they had some other interesting movies in, that I have seen. So I didn't watch at the moment, but I was like, oh shit, these are on Tubi when I clicked on there to go get the movie because I started watching it, had to stop, went back, and then on that homepage. And on a side note, when I was done watching your documentary, a documentary about Dallas punk, I think it was like Everyone is A-OK or something like that, something I've never heard of, but it basically kind of covers the history of Dallas or punk rock in Dallas. That was there as a recommendation. I thought, well, let me check this out. And I
Yeah,
probably watched the first 30 minutes of that. It's almost 2 hour documentary. It's like an hour and 50 minutes. So it's like, all right, I need to stay focused on this documentary because
yeah,
that was last night when I was watching this. I don't want to get too deep into something else, but it was really cool that that was also there and available. So there's a lot of great stuff for something that's free. Watch a few commercials
yeah,
and you get to watch some cool stuff.
yeah. And I do think that their algorithm works pretty well. Like you said, like right after mine, here comes the Dallas Punk. I bet you after the Dallas Punk movie, ours pops up. Uh,
Right.
and we were super excited. So like, I grew up in the 90s. I don't know how old you are, but I'm about to turn 40. Um, and SLC Punk was like one of my favorite movies, right? Uh,
Right.
when the movie came out, it was like September 16th or 17th, whatever, when it actually dropped. And I went on to Tubi and I just typed the word punk, and it was SLC Punk, Punk Rock Lottery right next to it. I was like, who would have thought? That the algorithm would put me right next to my favorite movie from childhood. So, yeah, that was. I think that Tubi does a good job. And yeah, so we want to champion them because they champion their artists. So
Right. It's great format. It was super easy to watch. Obviously, it's as easy as any other streaming thing, right? They've got apps for your smart TVs or smartphones or whatever. They got an app for it just like any other streaming thing, and it works the exact same as any other streaming thing. And the majority of the streaming things out there anyway have a commercial version, and then if you pay more money, then you
yeah,
can go without commercials. So it's the exact same thing that you can get in so many other fashions out there, but this one's legitimately free.
yeah, yeah, and it actually pushes stuff around. Like uh, some of the other movies I've worked on in the past. They will get dropped on something like Apple or Amazon or whatever, but it's like you got to pay two, three, $4 or whatever to rent it, and you have to know that it's there. And that's the biggest
Right.
hurdle. It's like now you got to spend how much money advertising the fact that go dig into Amazon and you might find our movie, and that like so that really bothered me. And then if Amazon or like Netflix or whatever puts you on the free version, it's just as bad as Spotify. Like, all the
Right.
like artists that are fighting Spotify right now saying, we're taking our music off of it because you don't pay anybody. It's the same thing with Amazon. In fact, they just dropped the rate that they are paying people instead of like, saying, "Oh, we hear you people, like we'll start forking over a little more." Like our like CEO is the second richest man in the world. Like, no, they were like, actually, we're gonna just take a little more back, and you guys can just go kind of, sit on attack or whatever. Um,
Right.
and and then they went through and they cut off a ton of indies too. They just pulled a bunch of stuff from their library. So I was really angry at Amazon, and I'm glad that we're not gonna be on there anymore. So
As long as you have somewhere where people can see it, and then it turns out it's something that, as you've pointed out, it's very fair to go to a place like that. So, if only there were other places, I'm thinking, God, why don't we create our own thing? We should do our own thing. We can put our own things, just like I've said. And then the drawback is, well, you need enough money to have people justify the time to then take care of doing that. And then, oh, if we're going to pay the people that are going to put their stuff on there, then we got to figure out ways to bring in money. And then you got to run into all the things again. That's
not
the unfortunate drawback.
yeah. I mean, DIY is not. It is always going to be a labor of love. Like
Yeah.
there has never been like a DIY fucking van tour that like guys came back with a ton of money. Like no, they came back and they like hopefully still had their job. Yeah, like
Right.
that's one thing about Austin that I think a lot of places probably aren't like is most of the places in Austin understand that if you're in a band you're going to disappear for a month, and when you come back you're really going to want to keep your job. um, and so I do respect Austin businesses in that way where they all kind of do get that. And I don't think that it's that way in a lot of other places. But that's just one example of how doing the DIY lifestyle. It's not about money. It's about culture, and
Right.
and there's so much culture that's just being like squashed right now. Like I go back to like my hometown, um, where like there used to be a pretty vibrant scene of like people outside doing things, coffee houses, bars with concerts and stuff like that. And there's still some stuff going on. But man, there's just so many people are just inside their houses playing video games or on their phone or something. Like, half of the downtown is boarded up. It's just like it's really sad to see something that was, I would have compared like my hometown in like the late 90s to like a mini Austin. There was so much music and house parties and all that kind of stuff happening. It's just like dead. You can hear the crickets. Um,
Right.
I feel like that's happening in a lot of places. So hopefully, that was the other part of this movie was, um, a call to action for people to just get up and go do things again. you know like
Right.
if you're bummed that there's nowhere to go have a concert, then like make a place to have a concert, man. Don't just give up. Like, if you want to start a band, like just go start a band. Like you don't have to have the special edition Dinosaur Jr. Fender Telecaster or whatever. Like get the fucking Squire, put it in a little box, and like start a band, and like you don't need money. Like there's so many excuses for starting something, and I feel like the more people who do start things, the more culture there's going to be. So there has to be the people who are willing to take that first leap, and then everybody else goes, oh cool, something's happening, maybe we can get off our phones, maybe we can stop playing video games for a day.
Right.
Let's get back out in the real world. And you know, I for a very long time had said, oh, I want to make a movie. I want to make a movie. I want to direct something. But I don't have the money. And it's just like, okay, well, let's try it this way. And through that process, I realized like, yeah, this is the way it has to be done at first. Um, and so I ended up having to make that like it was important to me to have that end up being like the message. The message wasn't you know punk rock, like it was just like go do stuff. you know like
Right.
that's the most important thing. Like stop procrastinating and go make something happen. Like we can all create, we can all be interesting, fun, culture moving people. So yeah.
Right. And I think that's what your documentary did. It shows culture, it shows community, and I don't remember who said it, but towards the end, somebody said something to the effect of, hopefully this inspires this to happen in other cities, multiple other cities, and to do something like that. Basically, what you said. Hopefully that inspires because it's a really great concept for, there's handfuls of people. There's people in your documentary specifically saying, I just moved to town. I just decided, I heard about this from the blind guy sitting in the sauna or wherever
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
and I just showed up and here we go. I'm meeting people and I'm starting a band, whether, they're viewed as from the contestants as joke bands, because that, some people pointed out if you don't do extreme things, you're probably not going to win. And it is a competition about winning the competition, not like what prize money and what benefit we're going to travel around and get a record contract. No, it's something fun and diverse and kind of a community thing and bring people in and be a part of and enjoy something different than just, and I don't want to say just the local bands that you normally see, but to be fair, a lot of the local bands you normally see, you can probably see on a relatively regular basis. But this concept here, where you're probably taking some people from local bands and then others and mixing it up, you get something completely different than what you would normally get on a regular Friday, Saturday night, go to the club and who are we going to see?
Yeah.
Right. So I think you did a great job of that, and a great job. I think the way you put it together to inspire others to hopefully go do that. I mean, maybe they come up with their own idea. It's not a punk rock lottery, it's something else along those lines. But uh, I felt inspired to be like, man, I had such a good time because, and you could probably get it. It depends on, I'm going to go back to that statement, eye of the beholder. Well, I think in the punk community, there are a lot of interesting people, and the concept of punk lottery and the way it's done, you get to see a lot of interesting characters, right? That's what makes any good story. If you don't have good characters, then it doesn't matter how good the story is. The characters are like, you know what? I don't get it. This is dumb. They're not interesting. I'm not paying attention anymore. But you have interesting characters, and the story will probably tell itself through the characters being interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think the punk community can do that. And I think you did a great job of documenting that. And hopefully people see that because there are a lot of interesting characters. No offense to Austin, but I'm sure go to any big city and you have your interesting characters. Some of those people that are maybe more stand out, more vocal, whatever. Your peculiar bands, the people, from years past, the guy that was the judge, I forget his name, but the guy that had won a few times, the bigger guy. Uh, I forget. He dressed up a few
oh
times in the
oh
previous
oh
years. Kind of had some footage.
Zach Volta, yeah.
Yes, that's it
He's the guy.
exactly.
He's the guy
And
who like made it like more of a competition beyond just writing cool songs. He was the guy who decided like, let's show up with costumes and horn players and let's just bring it to the 12th level. Uh,
right, yeah, and there's so much more that goes on. So I hope everybody that sees this obviously goes and watches it. It's well worth your hour and a half that you're going to spend doing it. But the concept's great. It's not just let's put together some people, some random people, and make some stuff. They've got to create interesting band names that they're also judged on. Where if you win, you get to pick your slots. And obviously, as they rightly pointed out, the first slots, less people are going to see you. That's just the nature of going to a show. If you're there towards the end, that's when most people are probably going to be there. At the beginning, less people are going to be there. So they made everything count. The little logo or uh, picture or whatever that goes along with the band's name, all of that factored in. And, it comes down to judges. You get judges involved in anything, they're going to have their own personal biases. I personally think that the New York Dolls band, Looking for a Kiss, was pretty amazing.
yeah,
The song, the cover, and then the whole entire concept, and then the artwork that went with it. But I felt like the way the judges were talking, they probably didn't get the New York Dolls reference. They were going down that path, but I don't think they just realized that it was a New York Dolls thing that they
yeah,
were kind of
yeah. They
covering.
were, yeah, they were like, wow, that was more like a glam thing, like, but
Yeah,
they didn't have enough time to really like see what we get to see in the rooms.
right,
Those
right,
judges didn't have that VHS camera sitting there watching all that come to fruition. So, um,
right.
yeah, I think that they were probably the best band, like musically, um, just in general for the whole competition. They didn't even place. Like, who knows what they would have been? Are they third place? Were they sixth place? Nobody knows. But
Right.
like when it really comes down to it, take away the costumes and the fucking merchandise, all that, and yeah, I mean, I think yeah, they were the best band, and that guy, the lead singer guy, he's been in a lot of cool bands, and is just generally like such an intense person. He's like he also competes around the world with some form of mixed martial arts or whatever. He's just a beast, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
And it goes back to I think the guitar player of that band, if I got his name right, Bjorn, right? I think he had said that he just moved in from Wisconsin, like shortly before that had happened.
I think he hadn't moved. He came down from Wisconsin or
Oh,
Minneapolis. He came down from
okay.
Minneapolis just to compete. So
Oh,
he had lived in Austin before, and then was living there for a
gotcha.
while, and was like, "No, I'm coming back for the lottery." And there are people like that will move and they'll come back for the lottery, or they'll get really big with one of their bands, and they'll kind of like, you know, not be able to come back. I mean, there's been members of a few larger bands that have participated at one time or another, and I didn't really want to like make it that movie. You know, I wanted to stay away from, you know, here's the famous people and let's bring them in, and you know, if you don't know about punk rock, then you don't care. You know, because even if somebody's famous in punk, it still is such a niche thing, right? And there's nothing wrong with
Right.
that. Like, we don't, you know, we don't need everybody giving a shit. It's just, but you're gonna, when it comes to making a movie, you're gonna push people away, you know, and that was one of the big
Right.
things that I wanted to do, is I wanted to make it digestible to anyone, you know, like the way I said it to the guys in the editing room. I was like, I want a 16-year-old and a 67-year-old to both be able to watch this movie, neither of them ever being at a punk show in their lives and say, that was fun, you know, I
Right.
like that, you know, huh, I feel like maybe I should go do something like bake a cake or whatever, you know, like I don't know, but like, yeah, we wanted it to be more like universal themes that can go outside of the punk community. So like there is aesthetic, there is a lot of crazy fun punk characters and stuff, and if you're into punk, if you're into cult film, like you're gonna love it for that reason. But we didn't want to, you know, push people away or pigeonhole ourselves in any way. So
And with the famous people, to be fair, all of them were the non-famous people at some point before they got to wherever they were. And
yeah,
you might be capturing some of those people at this point. You know, who knows? As you pointed out, some of the people at some point were these people that their bands caught a little bit of fire there, and now they don't have the time necessarily to maybe come back. And so this type of activity does capture that. But I think by seeing an event where you don't see, you know, David Rodriguez was in this event, and you went to some of the other bigger name bands that people might recognize and they're participating, then some people are going to make, oh, this is one of those where all the, you know, the big name people, they just get together and play around, as opposed to maybe by showing, oh, these are just, I don't know who any of these people are.
yeah,
That means any of us could do this. Why are we any of us doing this somewhere, right? It's not just for certain people that can are already established, great guitarists, great drummer, and not to take anything away. There was a lot of great musicians there. So I'm definitely not saying that the people that participate aren't great. It's just the people that already have some name in punk because they are deemed as having done something good already. It shows that anybody can get in, and then it also showcases those people that are probably just your other friends in your community that are in some other bands or that you see at some other shows, or maybe somebody that just moved to town, and you get to see how great it is and that they are. And with the concept 30 days to come up with 5 songs, right? You know, there's bands. I talked to some bands, and some bands come up with a lot of songs and they'll release a single every other month. And other bands are like 3, 4, 5 years in between releases in some cases. And that might be a little more extreme, but still, they're coming up with 5 songs with 5 people they've never played with, or 4 or 5 people they've never played with before. And they're doing all that within 30 days. And to be fair, some of that stuff is really good. Obviously, we only get little snippets of a few songs, but you can tell it's like, oh, that's really good. I'm really impressed. Only the band that suffered the the bad luck of the band members in that
yeah,
band, their stuff was like, yeah, that's some punk rock I probably would have made if I at like 12 years old, as you pointed out. Like, I've never played that guitar, but I bet I can do something with it. And that's probably how I picture myself sounding, because they were down a lot and basically came up with everything within a few days. That's if you think that doing it in 30 days is hard, well, I'm sure within a week, a Monday, and it's on a Saturday, as the newly appointed bass player pointed
yeah,
out. And there was only 3 of them, counting the bass player
yeah.
that was in the band for less than a week.
Dude. I mean, that
But
story, like that
characters,
storyline, yeah, that storyline, that through line. I mean, to me, if you want to see a movie about, you know, some semi-popular or really big punk rockers that started low and then blew up, like there's 1,000 of those documentaries. How many like stories are there of just like this sort of fish out of water, people stumbling over their own feet, like just, and then still finishing. They made it to the finish line. Uh, and I feel like their story is one of the most fun parts of the movie because it's just
Right.
like, oh, these guys are screwed, and they're goofballs to begin with, and and then all of it comes together, and it's not just they did it, good for them, the three of them got on stage after losing half of their band, and like showing up to rehearsals at somebody's house when he's not even there. Like this is the weirdest shit. But then the fact that they tied all of that into their big song that they played, they wrote a
Yeah.
song about fuck the three guys who quit. Like that's
Yeah.
like you
That was
can't
amazing.
write that shit. You can't write that shit. That just
Right.
happens. And yeah, I
Yeah.
think the underdog story, the fish out of water stories, those are always more fun for something like this, where you again, you want to do something a little like experimental. Like, let's work with people who you don't know. You want to see a movie about history that shows you, how person A got to point B to point C to who they are now. There's 1,000 of those movies, and there's nothing wrong with them. It's just not what we wanted to make. It's not what the event is, and so it couldn't be what the movie was.
Right. And I think you inadvertently probably captured a lot of the things that people like about their reality TV shows, the reality game shows, all the things, because the punk characters are interesting. You get the guy that has the people come, he's in the band and he says nothing and he's not there, and they're at his house practicing for like 3 hours and he never shows and then never tells him he's not coming. You have this guy that we're all now saying to ourselves, we don't know this guy. And
Yeah,
he's probably blackballed, as he rightfully should be, from the event, because that's pretty fucked up to do to people that are trying to do something that everybody else is doing. But we all are, as we are watching any of these shows, like, fuck that guy.
yeah,
I can't believe he did that to them. You're getting that kind of element, but it's inadvertent. It's not, hey, you set out to do it. It's just, well, you get 8 bands times 4 or 5 band members a piece, and you get that many people together. Well, unfortunately, especially in any community, but I'm sure in the punk community, it'd be hard pressed to not get 1 or 2 people that are going to end up like that.
yeah. No, I mean, yeah, there's always going to be the people who have to bail for one reason or another, or who argue or whatever, and that's the fun part. It's like when you're in a band that lasts 8 years, like there is definitely a story when you guys, all threw fists because couldn't agree on something, or you got so sick of each other on tour, or one of them quit, or one of them like got in a car wreck or whatever. Like there's so many things that happen over all those years to a band. Like you get your battle scars, and that's having these people have to do it in 30 days. I was just like, it's so much fun because you just at the beginning of the movie I say a microcosm of the macrocosm. Like it's just, you get what some people take 7, 8, 10 years of drama slowly through it, and just whoosh, 30 days. Like you get people quitting on day 7. Like that's awesome. You get people arguing
Yeah.
about the direction of their band, like when they just have to write some fucking songs and go, like like but that's the thing about ego, and
Right.
that's, yeah, that's the fun part of any sort of reality show, like scripted anything. Like you have to have that tension, that suspense, that drama, or it's just like, okay, there's people playing guitars, cool, man, like that's no fun.
That's the way it really should be. You should know getting in. People probably ego, right? They're probably like, I am so good, it doesn't matter who's going to be in this band. We're going to fucking rip. The guy, he had a weird name, Kiki maybe or something like that.
Yeah,
Uh, Good dude. He had the right attitude. He could have been the guy, because it sounds like even his band member said he wrote a lot of really good riffs. And he even said, I have all kinds of riffs. I show up just fucking play them. And if they like it, great. If not, fuck me, whatever. We're just going to
Yeah,
keep going, right?
yeah,
But you could be on the flip side of that, and whether you're talented or not, just be like, well, I've got it down. They just need to fucking follow me. And if we do, we're going to win, right? You could have that
like the
attitude.
Kevin guy.
And yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's just like,
absolutely.
yeah,
And you had the drummer, wrong attitude. I can't remember which band it was, or maybe it was a story, but they're talking about the drummer. He's like, he just wants to play fast. I just want to play fast punk. I don't really want to do what these guys are doing. I just want to play fast punk. Dude, you are the concept. You're thrown together with like four other dudes. Challenge accepted. That's the only phrase that you need to say. We're if what you want to do, you put it out there, and if the majority wants to do it, sweet. If not, guess what? Challenge accepted. I'm going
yeah,
to be here for the month, and I'm going to make the best of this, and it'll be a fun experience. Even though we're not going to play the music I want. It's not a band. It's
right.
not a band that's going to move on from there. It could have. On the side note, has any band that you know of that have been thrown together as a group moved on? Any songs that were written in that 30 days ever go on to be recorded?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think there's at least three bands that started because of the lottery, and they just kept playing.
That's
Like
awesome.
only one of them have I seen. One of them got pretty big, but it was like at the beginning. So this is like, 2010-ish, and I didn't even live in Austin. I think they were called Concrete or something like that. But they like became like touring guys, like left town. Um, there was a band called Disowned. Um,
Oh yeah,
that
this song TX played them on the
yeah,
show, and I played a band out of Austin called Concrete Elite. They kind of play like a heavy oi, deep, just heavy, almost hardcore blend of oi music.
they would be
I don't know
like,
if that's the band, but they are from Austin.
yeah. I mean, if they're like, in their mid 40s or something, it might be them. I'm not exactly sure. Definitely like, because like I said, they were like first year band. So I
Cool.
never got to see them. But yeah, Disowned. I mean, that they all met at the lottery, and they just said, let's just keep playing. And they,
That's
are
awesome.
still, they're still playing today, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think they
and then
put something new out. We just played them on the podcast within the last year or two.
yeah, yeah. So they're constantly, working. I actually, the lead singer, he worked in the bar I worked in. So like they would play the bar every once in a while, just kind of show up and set up on the floor and start screaming, and and I, like once I knew like their history, it just like, I just got like little butterflies every time they played. Just like it's so cool knowing that, these guys would not exist if it wasn't for the lottery. You know,
Right.
and but there's no pressure. Like if you don't want to, you don't get along with the guys or whatever. Like you still did it. Great. Shake their hand. You never have to play with them again. It's fine. Like we're not here to start the next big band. We're here to just try and work with other people. And I think rather than like having a band that actually all stays together and moves on and keeps the same name and whatever, like I, I think the more important thing is that there have been little networking connections that have happened over 11 years that have started other projects because of that, just crossing paths. And that, like you said at the earlier, have people having just moved to town, like now 50 musicians. You
Right.
didn't know anybody, now 50 musicians, or you're an established guy or gal, and you show up, and then boom, like there's a couple of people you've never met. How did you not know them? Austin is still a small town, even though there's 3 million people there or whatever. Like when it comes to different scenes, it's still supposedly a small town, but you always have that one person that's like, how did I not know you? Like we've played,
Right.
we our bands have played in the same venue, like like right after each other. Like here's my poster, here's your poster. We've never seen each other's bands. It's been 7 years. Like how did we never meet? So having somewhere where you kind of just forced to meet these people, um, yeah, it's really important. And it was it was a little scary during COVID when, it didn't happen and the question was like, is somebody gonna start it again? You know, and I'm glad that it did come back. So
I am too. That's awesome. And along the lines of what we were just talking about, and I guess to go further into your involvement in the documentary, not just the creating it, the band that you were a part of in the documentary, Pantychrist. When you guys said that name, I thought, is that the fucking Pantychrist we played on the podcast? And then, within a minute or two, you guys talk about the actual band. Oh, no, that's the band that we played on the podcast.
yeah,
I knew them, we've played them, but I mean, I played thousands upon thousands of bands in the I don't know how many episodes we've done, but at least a lot of the names will sound familiar. Some I recognize more than others. And for a second, I thought, did these guys go on? Did you go on? And with the same band? But no, it was. Turns out there was just coincidentally a name that had already been used.
yeah. And I mean, it's 30 days. We're not like Kiki says, we're not going out and Googling band names. We're just
Right.
like, oh, that's funny. But the fact that like, the social media web like got to Canada to these girls for them to see that and be like, that's our name, like, and start this little feud, like, and it's just, it was so perfect, like there's,
Right.
again, like you can't write that stuff. And I like, I really, those girls are really fun. Like I don't know how serious they were, but they put on such a face, of aggression towards us, and like, yeah, um, they played along very well, if not just actually being angry with us. But
Well, you know what? As I was saying, there's the certain bits of drama that people are attracted to in watching reality TV and stuff like that. And I like things to still be more positive. I think there's enough negative shit in the world that to focus too much on the negative. But to be fair, some of that drama is still very interesting and intriguing, eye-catching. Like, oh, I want to see more. Oh, I want to hate that guy because that guy, he fucking dug out everybody else. Those kind of was funny. That again, you can't write that stuff. It just happened. It's just the nature of things. You coincidentally came up with a name that some people, only one band created any sort of merchandise, at least in that iteration, that seventh annual, right? So there's, people aren't going out and making social media pages and posting when the next show is and any of these type of things for the band's specific, yet it still found its way to them, which is hilarious and
yeah,
funny. And that's funny drama, whether, that they're mad that you guys are using their band name, whether they understood the concept of what you were really doing with the band name or not, but it's funny. And it's that kind of drama or something that's that interesting thing that is the things you want to see, whether people want to admit it or not. And I like it more on, like I say, more on that scale. You don't want to see people so pissed at each other in a 30-day thing that they're fist fighting and shit like that. It's like, guys, it ain't that serious. It's more funny about the band that had the singer that was a Scorpions cover band guy, and he wanted to do stuff more in that vein. And they're like, dude,
yeah,
it's not punk or metal
yeah,
lottery. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's punk
Well,
lottery.
fucking metal.
Yeah, I'll do it in an English accent.
Yeah, yeah,
Even though scorpions are German, but whatever,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Uh that's the funny drama. You're like, yeah, I want to see that. That's funny. And
yeah,
it's not so serious that people are going to say, fuck it, we're not going to do this thing. People are going to leave for whatever the reasons were, can't make the schedules work out, whatever, and that's all right. Shit like that's going to happen, but you don't have to see people like, oh, you're not listening to my ideas and I want to do this song or this style.
yeah.
It's like, fucking get your 5 songs. Get your 5 songs. You need to get 5 songs. That's the important part. Is you got to get 5 songs put together.
Yeah, and if you want to be the guy who really has to argue that much, like you're going to be the one that everybody's making fun of in the documentary, and we're not going to show the argument. We're just going to show everybody talking shit about you, because like
Right.
who the hell are you to like actually argue over something for 30 days, you know? And another thing about the Pantychrist thing is like I actually felt really good that we got that on camera because I was like, well, in the end, even if we did piss them off, like now whoever watches this movie is going to know they exist. So, like, here you go, Pantychrist. Here's your free advertising. Sorry, we stole your name for 30 days, but like, I didn't know they existed. I went and listened to their music. I was like, these girls are pretty good, you know? So, hell yeah, you know?
Right. Which is awesome. And again, I think a lot of fun, but a lot of things, as you pointed out, can stem from it. You know, everybody's trying to be creative and fun, kind of gives another outlet for people. And it's such a short window. It's not like, hey, you're going to do this for a year. Hey, like, pick whatever TV, game show type reality, whatever, right? You're going to an island for 2 weeks. They tell you a month or whatever, but we all know it's like 10 days, 2 weeks. And we're going to take you for like 2 to 3 weeks and you're secluded from everybody and you have to create all these things. No, it's like, go live your life, do whatever, do the best you can. We all want to enjoy whatever it is you guys put out at the end. And that's all it is. Get a couple, get some trophies, there's a trophy you don't want to win. Unfortunately, it's pretty obvious who was going to win it this time, but that's kind of wasn't their fault.
Yeah. But again, like, it's a badge of honor too, you know? Like, I,
Right.
I, I love that they have a last place, you know? Like, um,
Right.
first place, second place, great. Last place means like you went through it. You had the real band experience, you know? Like, no real bands just get together like the first place band and like all just love each other like best friends and knock out cool music and like come up with, start printing merch. Like no, the real band experiences, you go through it. And so last place is, yeah, I think it's the most important part of the competition, in general. So
Do you have any personal experiences from your experience doing it that might not be specifically portrayed? Because, I'm sure your experience similar to, band 1 through 8, all something similar other than the dynamics of, individual personality, ego, and all those things that you have to deal with. But just generally being thrown in with four other people and being like, all right, I have to do this. Is there anything that kind of stands out for you?
yeah, I mean, I didn't want to focus too much on my band. We actually, most of it, like, we all got along for the most part, but there was a lot of tension around our band name. Like, we didn't just come up with Pantychrist, like, that's the first thing we came up with and let's just go with it. No, there was like 100 names and people were getting pissed, you know? And like, I, it, it was snarky, like, enough, like passive aggressive enough that I didn't want to put it in the movie because it was like, just kind of made everybody look really petty. When it came down to it, it was just like, it didn't fucking matter, and it was like 3 days of us like texting, like, "Arr," uh, and everything else was fine. But, I thought the more important part for actually showing in the movie was the name that we ended up getting and how that caused some drama rather than, you know, uh, five grown men just like getting angry at each other over band names.
Right? I think what you really did, I mean, obviously you created your goal, a full length movie. You directed it, you did the whole thing. It's out there, people get to see it. But I think what you did is also a proof of concept for this type of idea. Just as you pointed out, there's so many other things. As I said at the beginning, I really feel like this obviously it takes more people, more cameras, more time, more everything. And so hard to do something like that as a labor of love without, you know, planning and a lot of people on board and a lot of people willing to work for beers and all the other things that people do in the punk rock community to help each other out for free. But it's really a proof of concept because just as you pointed out, you could film and do easily 20, 30 minutes of just your interactions over that month period per band, right? And that's a whole entire, because I'm sure every band, how much of their own thing, writing the songs, all the actions, not and it'd be their own character because you need as there where they have dedicated people, producer, camera, everything that's kind of following people around. And that would obviously be costly, time consuming, a lot of volunteers, whatever you want to call it. But it would be a lot. But I think you proved that it's an interesting concept. And if you had the time, money, effort, people, and all those things, it would be a very entertaining thing to watch as
Yeah,
as a series, even.
yeah. I mean, and like, some of the people at the end of the movie had said, like, hopefully this spreads to other cities, like just talking about the event, hopefully even in small town. I think that that would be the coolest thing is like if like little small towns started like getting punk rock lotteries and high school kids doing it and stuff, like big cities, there's already so many bands, but there's a lot of little pockets where like there's definitely like 20 kids sitting in their bedroom like, man, I wish I just had somebody to play with, like so. But I think it's yeah, it's more than just hopefully the event spreads, but yeah, hopefully, people are also like, yeah, I'm gonna pick up my camera too and let's film this and we'll put it on YouTube. And before you know it, you've got Punk Rock Lottery, Nacogdoches, Texas, and Punk Rock Lottery, somewhere outside of Seattle, and like just all the little places that could do it. There's no reason to not turn on a couple of cameras. You don't have to make a 7-year fucking documentary like I did, but like there's no reason to not document it, because there's going to be some really fun interactions. It's not just a concert.
Right.
So
And you're
um,
right. And what you did shows that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think again, call to action, man. Like if you are somebody out there, you're 15 or you're 55, like if you've always said like I want to make a movie, you can do it. Like you don't have to just give up because the cards aren't in your favor or whatever. Like you want to start a band, like you can do it. Like I've seen bands like that are just one guy, with a guitar and a drum machine. Like, if you can't find other people, you could still do it, um, or just never play live and, like you play all the instruments, record it. Like there's, I know people like that too that have amazing records who have never played live. And it's like, oh, who played drums? Me. Who played bass? Me. It's just like, okay, cool. Yeah, good for you, Um, but yeah, yeah, you want to write a book? Go write a book. You can do it.
Pete, real quick, Pete from Fool's Errand, his band or him anyway, out of Las Vegas, same thing. His album that he put out under Fool's Errand, Big Up the Impact, from like 2 years ago. Amazing. That whole album, so good. He had a couple features, a couple people jump on to do, some guest vocals from some other bands and stuff like that. But as you pointed out, you can totally do it. Just got to have the willingness to do it, the willingness to learn, and not necessarily fail, just learn.
Yeah,
As you pointed out, camera. I don't know how many things I've seen about people filming whatever they're going to film, and they say the iPhone or the Pixel phone or whatever because the cameras are so good at this point. Start somewhere, and start getting footage, and then start editing some stuff, and you'll learn just right off of that. You'll be like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. These things different, and then the more you do, the more you learn, the better you get, and probably the more interesting it will be to you to continue, and other ideas that you'll probably get to go along with it.
yeah, yeah. And there's,
Yeah.
there's something really special about having restrictions. You know, when you do have all the money and all the people, there, you don't make some of those little decisions that you would make if you, were hindered by something. You know, like if I had tons of money and a production crew, would I have bought the VHS cameras? Maybe, you know, because I think like that, but maybe not, maybe all of that would have been HD and, could still be a cool story, but it wouldn't have that extra little, you know, pizzazz to it.
And you did a great job with it. You did a great job of, I think what I was getting at a minute ago, like you could go from town to town. Like I could meet you somewhere. We could be at a festival or a show, and you tell me about this just in conversation. I go tell other people, oh yeah, they do this thing where they draw and names, and they do this event, and it did. I could give my secondhand information from you to somebody else, and maybe it inspires somebody to do it. But what you did is actually give a visual representation where people can see it in action and see how interesting it is and how fun it would probably be, as opposed to the second, third, fourth hand story that we might get about concepts like that unless somebody goes and documents it.
Right. And yeah, I mean, and it doesn't have to be the same either. So, like, even recently, after the movie came out, somebody started like a Reddit thread about the movie. It's not like a long one, but a few people talking about it. Great. Um, and one person came in and was like, no, it didn't start in Austin. It started in Denton, Texas, in the 90s. And I was like, okay, like, I didn't know that. But that's cool that they had something like that. But then I talked to some other people like, hey, did you know that they did one in Denton in the 90s? And they were like, oh, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how we came up with our idea. But the one in Denton in the 90s, they only had one day to write one song, so it wasn't this like bigger thing that Austin decided, like, let's go even further with it. But that's fine, and if you're in your little town and you want it to be, just 1 week and two songs, or you want it to be a year and 100 songs, like, go ahead. Like, you don't have to do it exactly like this, right? You know, like, just come up with some sort of fun, community gathering that involves people getting out of their comfort zone, you know?
They definitely did, and you did a great job capturing that. Is there anything else about this? Like, let's cover again. Where should people follow? And on a side note, two side notes. One, are you doing anything else that may be coming out, I guess, in the near future that you want to also point out? And two, I loved when you were singing and you included that your band member talked about he's got a lot of ink on his arms, and I didn't realize he had all that. Oh, it really he had the lyrics written down, or some of them anyway. Obviously, you didn't have enough stuff written down to have all your songs on there, but I thought that was hilarious, and that you included that your band member noticed that and
Yeah,
then realized what it was after.
yeah, yeah. No,
That was
that's
great. But
yeah. I went so far like writing like really fun lyrics, and then was like, oh, why the hell did I do that? Like, there's so much to memorize right now. Like, I'm never gonna get through this. Like, I should have just wrote like 5-word songs or something. But so I kind of put myself in that position. But yeah, again, yeah, just those little things that end up showing just how DIY the whole process was, just
right.
but yeah, as far as other things, so I just in the same vein, there's a band from Austin called Tear Dungeon. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but
No.
it's like a super group essentially. Like, all the members of like some of the best bands in town got together and said, like, well, we play power pop and we play glam and we play metal or whatever, like, but we want to just make like a death metal band, like something really intense, loud, just like very far away from what we normally do. Um, and then we're going to hide our identities by wearing these gimp masks on stage. And then and then they're kind of like Guar. They just spray blood on everybody, you know? And uh, and they're super fun, and like when they first came out, like, I had no idea who was in the band. I saw them like 5 times before I realized. I was like, oh, is that Andrew? Like, uh, and that was super fun. And so they just got signed to a label. Um, it's a new label, but they're really pushing their artists to go on tour and to put out records and stuff like that. And so they were like, hey, we're getting thrown out on this tour and we'd really like to, record it somehow. Like, would you want to go on tour with us? And um, I have recently moved to New York. I'm broker than broke, like just trying to figure out how to live here, because things didn't work out the way I expected them to when I first got here, which is fine. I can roll with the punches. But so I was like, well, I'd love to, guys, but I can't take off 30 days or whatever. And I don't like have any money to, hire people or, get you nice cameras or anything. And I was like, okay, I'll send you 3 VHS cameras and a box full of VHS, and you guys can film yourselves on the way to the East Coast. When you get here, I'll jump in the van for 4 days, and then I'll send you on your way, and you can film yourselves on the way home. And we did it, and they just got home, and so there's a huge box of VHS tapes sitting at my buddy Wayne's house, waiting to be digitized, and I don't know when that will happen, but that's a movie in a box. It's there. So
That's awesome.
yeah, and that one again, it'll have that kind of old school aesthetic. The band is, very charismatic, weird characters. So it'll be fun. I don't know if it'll be like a full feature documentary or anything, but it'll be something fun for people to watch. Yeah. Otherwise, I shot another little short film that was pretty close to my heart. I had a friend pass away in my hometown, and for a long time, it was like his parents were fighting with his ex-wife, and they didn't like appreciate the way that he had passed away because they were religious or whatever. So he just didn't get a gravestone. They just put him in the ground, no gravestone. And so me and my other friend thought, let's take a huge rock from Texas, put it in the trunk, and drive from Texas to my little small town in Illinois and drop this rock over his grave. And along the way, we're just gonna meet people in small towns and talk about how small towns have been falling apart and how people are passing away because there is no more culture. There is nothing like that stuff is going away. And it's
Right.
it's just a short. We talked to a few people. We dropped the rock on his grave, and that one's going to be a short, and it's going to be called "Carry That Weight." So that's a fun one. That'll be easy to put out. And then I just finished a script. I really, really want to get into narrative directing. So I'm gonna try and get some funding for this script and make my first little directed feature.
Well, I think with having the bodies of work as you acquire them, as you have right now, and then with the other ones, that's probably helpful. If the other ones are like this one, I think you did an excellent job. Like I said, what you did off of 700 bucks too, and then all of your time. So, that's not even considering all the time you and other people put in to get this done. That's just money out of pocket. Not
And
time
like
equals money, which it does.
I will warn anyone who wants to make a documentary for $700, start saving now because the end of it is quite expensive. Like the, the the legal fees and the licensing and the uh, like insurance and the coloring and the sound. If you really want to do all that right, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. And that was another reason why it took so long. It was kind of one of these things where it's like, oh well, I got to pay that lawyer, so I guess I'm just going to put some money aside every month until I can pay that lawyer, and then we'll keep moving forward with this thing. And so yeah, even if you make your movie for $700, put some stuff aside for the very end of it because it's going to kick you in the ass.
That's fair. That's fair. It's good advice,
Yeah.
because I'm sure that watching the punk rock lottery documentary will inspire people to do their own punk rock lottery just because it looks like a fun concept. I think what you did will also inspire other people to go out and film and do things too. So it's good advice.
Yeah. 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 I every time I hear like the Robert Rodriguez story, like, oh, he made mariachi for $7,000 or whatever, I'm just like, you're lying. You shot it for 7,000, but how much did it cost you to get that thing out, man? Like, what is he hiding from us? Because I know he is. Now that I've done this, I know he's hiding something, you know.
Right, right. I've actually listened to him tell that story, and he did not, but you also probably didn't have some like if you would have been interviewing him, you could have asked him, all right, $7,000 is what it cost you to get it all filmed, maybe
Yeah,
even put together. But then, as you pointed out, to actually get this out, like how much more did you pay?
right. And I mean, and maybe things were a little different in the 90s, but you still got to pay an entertainment lawyer. You still got to, there are still people at the very end that need their pound of flesh, like,
Right.
or it's never going to get to this point. You want to do it without like perfecting the sound, without perfecting the color, put it on, something where you can just self-release like YouTube or Instagram TV or whatever. Like that's totally great. That's fine. It was just my personal um, goal to continue as a filmmaker. I was like, I have to get it on a streaming service, and however I have to make that happen, whatever I have to do to actually get it distributed in that way, I will, throw myself on the sword and do it.
There anything else that, uh, again, I think I asked, and I just asked like five other questions after it. So why don't you let us know where's the best place to check out, website, if there's any social medias, any of those things to kind of follow and also easily spread the word once other people see it.
Absolutely. Um, Punk Rock Lottery Movie. That's pretty much the easiest way to find us on social media, anything. So it's Instagram slash Punk Rock Lottery Movie, Twitter slash Punk Rock Lottery Movie, punkrocklotterymovie.com. And that's probably the best place to start. It's a really simple website, a couple of pages that tells you a little bit about us, but it's got all the links to all our socials. It's got a link straight to Tubi. It's got a few other links to other things that you link stuff to. But yeah, I mean, pretty much that's the best place, punkrocklotterymovie.com, and you can find everything else from there. So
Well, Jacob, thank you for taking all the time and best of luck on your two other projects that you're currently working on. Hopefully those finish up for you without a hitch.
yeah, well now I know what I'm doing. So
That's the great thing about experience.
yeah, right, right. Well, hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. This was fun.